Have you ever walked into a room full of people and instantly recognized someone's face, but for the life of you, couldn't remember their name? You know you've met them before, maybe even had a decent conversation, but their name has just vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, their face is as clear as day in your memory. This happens to all of us, and there's actually a fascinating reason why our brains work this way. The truth is, our minds are wired differently for faces and names, and understanding this can actually make you feel a lot better about those awkward moments when you're desperately trying to recall someone's name while making small talk. Your brain treats faces and names as completely different types of information, processing them through separate neural pathways that work at different speeds and with different levels of efficiency. Let's start with faces. When you look at someone, your brain immediately kicks into high gear, analyzing dozens of features simultaneously. The shape of their eyes, the curve of their smile, the way their eyebrows arch, even subtle things like the distance between their nose and mouth. This happens in the fusiform face area, a specialized region in your brain that's basically a face recognition supercomputer. It's been evolving for thousands of years because recognizing faces was crucial for survival. You needed to quickly identify friend from foe, family from stranger. But here's where it gets interesting. Your brain doesn't just store one image of a person's face. It creates what scientists call a face template that can recognize someone even when they've changed their hairstyle, grown a beard, or are wearing glasses. This template is incredibly robust and can handle variations in lighting, angles, and even aging. That's why you can spot your college friend in a crowded market even though you haven't seen them in 5 years. Names, on the other hand, are processed completely differently. They're what researchers call arbitrary labels because there's no logical connection between a person's appearance and what they're called. Think about it. There's nothing about someone's face that screams, "I am definitely a Rajesh," or "I look like a Priya." Names are stored in your brain's language centers, the same areas that handle vocabulary and verbal memory. But unlike other words, names don't have rich associations or meanings that help you remember them. When you learn that someone is called Sharma, your brain has to create a brand new connection between their face template and this arbitrary sound. It's like trying to remember that a particular shade of blue is called cerulean versus just recognizing that it's blue. The face recognition happens automatically and instantly, but retrieving the name requires your brain to actively search through its verbal memory banks and make that specific connection. This is why you might remember that someone works in marketing, lives in Bandra, and has 2 kids, but still blank out on their name. All that other information has context and meaning that your brain can hook onto. Their job relates to your understanding of different professions, their neighborhood connects to your knowledge of Mumbai, and their family situation links to your own experiences. But their name is just floating there without any meaningful anchors.
There's also something called the tip of the tongue phenomenon that makes name forgetting even more frustrating. You know their name, you can almost feel it right there in your memory, but you just can't quite grab it. This happens because your brain has found the general area where the name is stored, but can't access the exact neural pathway to retrieve it. It's like knowing exactly which shelf a book is on, but not being able to spot it among all the other books. Age plays a role too, but probably not in the way you think. While it's true that name recall can become more challenging as we get older, even young people struggle with names more than faces. The difference is that older adults are more aware of their memory lapses and tend to worry about them more. But the basic pattern, remembering faces better than names, stays consistent throughout life. Cultural factors also influence how we process names and faces. In India, where we often use titles, nicknames, and multiple names for the same person, our brains have to work even harder to keep track of what to call someone. You might know someone as Ravi sir at work, Ravi uncle in your building, and just Ravi when you bump into him at the gym. Each context requires your brain to access a different name label for the same face template. The good news is that there are practical strategies you can use to get better at remembering names. The key is creating meaningful connections that give your brain something to hook onto. When someone introduces themselves, try to immediately use their name in conversation. Instead of just saying, "Nice to meet you," say, "Nice to meet you, Anjali." This forces your brain to actively process the name rather than just passively hearing it.
You can also try creating visual or verbal associations. If you meet someone named Deepak, you might think of the word deep and imagine them diving deep into a pool. Or if their name is Sunita, you could connect it to sun and picture them in bright sunlight. These associations give your brain additional pathways to access the name later. Another effective technique is paying attention to the person's face while they are saying their name. This helps your brain create a stronger connection between their face template and their name. Most of us are so focused on making a good impression during introductions that we are not really concentrating on encoding the person's name properly. Repetition also works wonders, but it needs to be spaced out over time. If you meet someone new, try to use their name a few times during your first conversation, then make a mental note to use it again the next time you see them. This spaced repetition helps move the name from your short-term memory into long-term storage. Understanding why we forget names but remember faces isn't just about satisfying curiosity. It's about being kinder to ourselves and others when these memory lapses happen. The next time you're in that awkward situation where you recognize someone but can't remember their name, you'll know that it's not because you're bad with names or because you don't care about people. It's simply because your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do, prioritizing the recognition system that kept our ancestors alive while struggling with the arbitrary labels that modern society has layered on top. So, the next time you find yourself saying, "I'm terrible with names but great with faces," remember that you're actually describing how every human brain works. You're not broken or forgetful, you're just beautifully, typically human.